Hey, everyone. Welcome to Storytelling Time, the place where every story comes alive. If you love getting lost in thrilling tales, gripping mysteries, and epic adventures, you're in the right spot. I'm your storyteller, and here, we don't just tell stories, we bring them to life. Whether it's fantasy, mystery, horror, or even a bit of comedy, we're all about immersion. So grab a snack, get comfy, and prepare for a journey that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single chapter. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join the Storytelling Time family. Let's dive into the stories that await, starting now. The highway shimmered, a black snake uncoiling into the bleached horizon. Heat rose in visible waves, distorting the already unreal landscape. 2 years. 2 years since my eyes locked with hers. 2 years, and the memory remained as sharp and sickening as the metallic tang of blood on a cracked lip. She lay sprawled like a discarded doll, halfway swallowed by the cracked asphalt. A child. No older than I had been when the world began to bleed gray. Her purple nightgown, faded and torn, clung to her small frame, a splash of bruised color against the monochrome. It was the nightgown that always snagged in my throat, a silent, accusatory finger. Her skin was stretched taut and leathery over bone, a dark mask molded by the relentless sun and the slow crawl of decay. A hole festered in her cheek, a black pit ringed by something unnatural. Blue tendrils, thin as veins, snaked from the darkness, tipped with tiny, obscene orange buds. I wished they were green. A foolish wish in a world where green was a ghost. These synthetic parasites, the now, devoured everything with a perverse artistry, painting death in shades that mocked life. Excitement, sharp and unwelcome, had clawed its way up my throat when I first saw her. A flicker of recognition in the vast emptiness. 6 years. 6 years since I'd seen a living face. My father, he was different. Preserved in a single, violent moment. A neat, red hole. Not this slow, grotesque consumption. His eyes, blood-soaked and bulging, had stared up at me from the pool of his own ruin. A macabre parody of a smile stretched his lips, stained crimson. The revolver, heavy and cold, still rested in his open palm. Relief, stark and brutal, had washed over me then. The same relief I felt now, looking at the festering wound on the child's cheek. I took the gun. I took his worn leather boots. I turned my back on him, lying broken amidst the yellowed remnants of what had once been a field. Our truck, a mangled beast of metal, smoked a few feet away, its wheels spinning uselessly against the dead earth. At the crest of the small rise, I paused, wiping sweat and blood from my forehead with the back of my hand. He looked like roadkill, a discarded thing. The sun, a malevolent white eye in the bleached sky, pulsed with heat. The gunshot in the girl's calf was small, almost insignificant compared to the gaping hole in her face. It was the nightgown. The innocent purple against the brutal reality. My stomach lurched, and I vomited onto the shimmering tarmac. A pathetic offering to the silent, dead child. She was so young. The same age I was when I left my father to bake under that same pitiless sun. It happened in the night, I thought, the heat already beginning to bake the bile beside me. Faint tire tracks, ghost-like in the sun-baked asphalt. She had gone. Alone. In the suffocating darkness, the red-hot pain her only companion. No memory of a green field, a blue sky. The sun climbed higher, leaching the last vestiges of blue from the sky. I stood, the taste of bile still bitter on my tongue. A cracked china doll, fading in the relentless light. I turned back to the road, the black ribbon dissolving into a hazy shimmer on the horizon. The diary, its pages brittle and yellowed, claimed it was March 3rd. The last wink of winter. But the diary lied now, as much as my own unreliable memories. The last time I knew a date with certainty, the last time the world held a semblance of order, I was 9. The day the school burned. A black plume against a bruised sky. The village followed soon after, wooden shacks catching like tinder. Building was a forgotten art in the sweltering heat, the days spent huddled in shadows, waiting for the brief mercy of the midnight hours. Grandma picked up bleach on the exodus. A small, unlabeled bottle. Soon, everyone was gone. My father, on his own grim journey. That day, after the girl, I scavenged enough fuel and canned goods to last the summer in the caves. Damp, echoing voids that reeked of the dead. But cool. Dark. Safe from the relentless sun and the blossoming horrors of the now. I'd waited too long to leave for the caves that year. The heat had become a physical weight, pressing me down. I remember lying under the truck, the meager shade a temporary reprieve before the inevitable blackness of heatstroke. Only when the sun bled orange and red into a bruised green and pink sky would I douse myself with the last of my water and drive. It was then, in those twilight hours, that they began to appear. Small, black dots against the dying light. Their ships. Growing larger, silent and ominous. Scientists in gray coats, I imagined. Watching. Waiting for the final death rattle before they began their sterile work. They were nothing but black pebbles in the sunset, disappearing with the safety of night. No lights, no sound, no exhaust. Just silent observation. That little dead girl, a premonition, perhaps. A stark reminder of the silent, dissociative years that had bled into one another like watercolors on dry paper. Each year a drop of dwindling water on parched lips. The cave should have claimed me days ago. I stand on the sun-baked roof of this abandoned gas station, the midday sun a brutal hammer against the gray sky. The yellow-brown plains stretch endlessly, silent and still. The highway, a black scar, bisects the emptiness. A lone telephone pole in the distance, the skeletal remains of a tree, the only other vertical lines in this flattened world. The silence is a physical force, a deafening roar pressing against my eardrums, a dry rasp in my throat. Blood, warm and sticky, leaks from the cracked blisters on my cheeks, tracing hot paths down my neck. I don't feel it. Not anymore. I am just a pair of eyes, recording the slow death of everything. The cave. I'd forgotten it. The last wink of winter. I've been waiting for this day. I extend my arms, palms open to the indifferent sky. Somewhere far away, a phantom echo of blue and green, a whisper of sound, I can almost feel them burn. Like an old photograph consumed by flame. The sensation begins to feel like rain, a cold, impossible relief. I bleached myself intentionally. The caves held their own dead. Deeper in, away from the faint light of the entrance, I found him. A man. In the beam of my flickering torch, his eyes were milky and half-closed, his mouth slack. A bottle lay beside his outstretched hand, a crust of foam clinging to his lips. He reminded me of Jeffrey, my little brother. If he had lived in the blue and green world, perhaps he would have looked like that. I kissed his cold forehead. The forgetting began soon after. A sweet surrender. Like falling asleep. This fucking nightmare, I hear a voice scream, distant and fading, from a place of blue and green. My legs begin to tremble. The blistered now is a universe away. Before I turn, before I walk down the hill towards the imagined rain, towards the sweet, comfortable gray that expands to fill my vision, I see her again. The little dead girl. Sprawled on the scorched earth. I smile. A small, private smile for her red, unblinking eyes. The smell of ash and burnt wood still clung to the edges of my memory, a phantom scent in the sterile air of the present. The school had been the first to go, a skeletal silhouette against a sky the color of a fading bruise. I was 9. Old enough to understand the fear in the adult's eyes, too young to grasp the totality of what was beginning. The village had always been a precarious collection of wooden shacks, leaning against each other like tired drunks. Dry grass, already brittle under the late winter sun, surrounded them. It wouldn't have taken much. A spark, a careless ember, and the whole place became a feast for the flames. I remember the heat, a suffocating blanket even before the fire. We'd spend our days in the meager shade, swatting at flies, waiting for the relative cool of the night to stir. Building anything substantial felt like a monumental effort in that oppressive heat. Gathering materials was a forgotten luxury. The fire spread with terrifying speed, leaping from shack to shack. The scream started soon after, a chorus of terror that echoed in the suddenly bright afternoon. I remember Grandma grabbing my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Bleach. That small, ominous bottle she clutched like a precious jewel. I didn't understand then. The exodus was a blur of panicked faces and choking smoke. People carrying what little they could salvage, their eyes wide with a fear I mirrored but didn't fully comprehend. The air tasted of ash and something else, something acrid and unfamiliar. The first signs of the now, though we didn't know it then. Just a strange sickness that seemed to follow the smoke. People started to cough. Then they started to change. Not all at once. It began subtly. A rash, a fever that wouldn't break. Then the blue tendrils, like delicate veins blooming beneath the skin. And the orange tips, they came later. A horrifying punctuation mark to the transformation. They became listless, vacant. Gone. My father, he tried to hold on to the then. He spoke of the old days, of rain and green forests, of a sky that was truly blue. But even his voice grew weary, tinged with the same fear I saw in everyone else's eyes. The journey was a nightmare of dust and despair. We buried those who succumbed along the roadside, shallow graves dug in the hard, unforgiving earth. The bottle of bleach passed from hand to hand, a whispered secret, a desperate measure. I saw people drink it. Some found a strange peace. Others, it only seemed to hasten the going. My little brother, Jeffrey. I remember his bright, curious eyes. He coughed a lot. He was so small. I don't remember exactly when he went. Just a gap in my memories, a silent space where his laughter used to be. Then there was just me and my father. The world had already begun to resemble the monochrome wasteland I now inhabited. The green faded, the blue leached away, replaced by a perpetual haze. He grew quieter. The light in his eyes dimmed. The fear remained, but it was mixed with a weary resignation. He still spoke of the then, but his voice was softer, like a fading echo. I remember the day he gave up. We were driving, the truck rattling along a deserted highway. He pulled over abruptly. His eyes were distant, focused on something I couldn't see. He didn't say a word. He just reached into the glove compartment, pulled out the revolver, and the memory always stops there. A sharp, brutal cut. The next image is the red stain blooming on his temple, the unnatural stillness of his body. He had chosen his going. A clean break from the slow, agonizing decay. In a way, it was an act of defiance against the now. I took the gun. Not out of any sense of vengeance or even understanding. It was just, there. A tool. Like his boots. Survival had become a series of pragmatic choices, stripped of emotion. Leaving him there, under the indifferent sun, there was a strange sense of finality. An ending to one chapter, the stark beginning of another. The world was truly empty then. Just me and the ghosts of what had been. The memory of the burning village, the panicked exodus, the slow, horrifying transformation, it all felt distant now, like a half-forgotten nightmare. But the fear, the underlying dread that had taken root then, remained. A constant companion in the silence. The little girl on the highway, she was a mirror. A stark reflection of what the now did to innocence, to potential. And in her dead eyes, I saw not just the end of her story, but a chilling glimpse of my own. The caves were a descent into the earth's cool, damp belly. A stark contrast to the relentless, sun-baked world above. The air hung heavy, thick with the cloying sweetness of decay and the earthy scent of wet stone. It was a darkness you could taste, a silence that swallowed sound. I'd found them by following a dried-up creek bed, a narrow fissure in the ochre landscape that eventually opened into a gaping maw in the hillside. Others had been there before me, or had sought refuge deeper within. The scattered remnants of their passing, gnawed bones, tattered scraps of cloth, empty tins, whispered silent stories of desperation. The entrance offered a sliver of weak daylight, enough to navigate the initial passage. But further in, the darkness became absolute. My father's old torch, its beam weak and wavering, became my lifeline. The walls dripped with condensation, the water cold against my skin. The silence was broken only by the occasional plink of a falling drop and my own ragged breathing. The stench of the gone was strongest in the deeper chambers. Bodies, contorted and swollen, lay scattered like discarded toys. The blue tendrils, thick and pulsating, writhed across their decaying flesh, the orange tips glowing faintly in the darkness. Some had clearly starved, their limbs skeletal beneath the stretched, leathery skin. Others bore the telltale signs of the now, their bodies grotesque parodies of their former selves. It was a charnel house, a silent testament to the world above. Yet, it offered a perverse kind of safety. The temperature remained relatively stable, a reprieve from the summer's brutal heat. And the darkness, while oppressive, also offered a sense of concealment. The gone, in their vacant stupor, rarely ventured far into the lightless depths. I found a small alcove, a narrow space behind a cluster of stalactites, and claimed it as my own. It was damp and cramped, but it was a sanctuary. I lined the floor with some of the less rotted cloth I found, creating a meager barrier against the cold stone. Days bled into weeks in the timeless darkness. My routine became a monotonous cycle of rationing food, conserving water, and listening to the silence. The torchlight became precious, used sparingly. In the long hours of darkness, my memories became my only companions. The burning village, the exodus, my father's vacant eyes, they played out in the theater of my mind, vivid and relentless. Sometimes, I would venture back towards the entrance, drawn by the faint promise of the outside world. But the heat, the shimmering emptiness, and the occasional bloated figure of the gone were enough to send me scurrying back into the cool embrace of the cave. It was during one of these forays that I found the man. He was in a side passage, slumped against the wall. The torchlight revealed the milky film over his eyes, the slackness of his jaw. The bottle lay beside him, the foamy residue on his lips a clear sign of the bleach. He didn't look monstrous. Not like some of the others. In the dim light, there was a strange stillness about him, a semblance of peace. And something else, a faint familiarity that tugged at the edges of my memory. Then it struck me. The shape of his face, the way his hair fell across his forehead, he reminded me of Jeffrey. Older, of course. But the same gentle curve of his mouth. A phantom image of what my little brother might have become in a world that hadn't ended. A wave of grief, sharp and unexpected, washed over me. It had been so long since I had allowed myself to feel anything. I knelt beside him, the cold stone pressing against my knees. I reached out and touched his forehead. It was cold and still. And then I kissed him. A silent farewell to a brother lost, a brother I barely remembered. A strange act of connection in a world devoid of it. It was not long after that, back in the suffocating darkness of my alcove, that the idea took root. The bleach. It had offered him an escape. A quiet fading. The nightmare, the constant fear, the gnawing loneliness, the relentless memories, perhaps there was a way out. A final descent into a different kind of darkness. A sweet sleep. The decision wasn't sudden. It was a slow, insidious creeping of acceptance. The world above offered nothing but pain and the ghosts of the past. The caves offered a temporary reprieve, but not a future. The memory of Jeffrey's peaceful face, the silent promise of oblivion, it became a siren call in the darkness. The last wink of winter had passed. The summer stretched ahead, a furnace of despair. I would not face it. The decision, once a fragile seed in the darkness, had taken root and grown into a quiet certainty. The fear hadn't vanished entirely, but it was overshadowed by a weary acceptance. The nightmare would end. The remaining food and water in my meager stash felt insignificant now, mere burdens to carry. I ate slowly, deliberately, savoring the last tastes. The stale crackers, the lukewarm water, they were the final communion with a world I was about to leave. My father's revolver, tucked into the waistband of his too large trousers, felt heavy and cold against my skin. It had been a tool of survival, a means to an end. Now, it was a silent witness to my own chosen departure. The torch, its beam flickering with increasing uncertainty, guided my final movements within the cave. I revisited the deeper chambers, the silent graveyard of the gone. Their grotesque forms no longer held the same terror. They were simply what remained. The end state. I paused by the alcove where I had found the man. His form was still slumped against the wall, undisturbed. A strange sense of kinship washed over me. He had found his peace here. Soon, I would find mine. The journey back towards the cave entrance felt different. There was no urgency, no fear of discovery. Each step was deliberate, a final farewell to this subterranean sanctuary. The air grew gradually warmer, the darkness softened by the faint promise of daylight. Emerging from the mouth of the cave was like stepping into a different world, even though it was the same desolate landscape. The sun, though still a pale, oppressive disk, felt brighter after the absolute darkness. The silence of the surface was different too, lacking the damp echoes of the earth. It was a vast, empty silence that stretched to the horizon. I blinked, letting my eyes adjust to the harsh light. The yellow-brown plains shimmered under the heat, the black ribbon of the highway beckoning in the distance. It was the same world I had left, but I was no longer the same. The weight of my decision had shifted something within me. The gas station, a skeletal frame against the gray sky, was my destination. I moved slowly, deliberately, conserving energy. The heat rose in waves from the cracked earth, but I barely registered it. My focus was inward, on the quiet settling of my resolve. The climb onto the gas station roof was arduous, my limbs heavy and uncooperative. But I persevered, pulling myself onto the sun-baked asphalt. The view from above was the same endless expanse, the same oppressive silence. But there was a sense of finality here, a feeling of being at the edge of the world. I stood for a long moment, the wind whispering through the rusted metal of the roof. The blood from the blisters on my cheeks had dried, leaving a tight, uncomfortable mask. I could almost feel the distant burn, the imagined rain on my skin. The memory of the little dead girl on the highway surfaced again, clear and sharp. Her small form sprawled on the desolate earth. In a strange way, our journeys had converged at this point, both ending in the vast indifference of this dying world. The bottle of bleach, tucked into my pocket, felt cool against my hand. It was the key. The final act. Looking out at the empty horizon, a sense of profound loneliness washed over me, quickly followed by a strange sense of peace. The struggle was almost over. The silence would soon be absolute. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't see the burning village or my father's vacant stare. I saw only gray. A vast, empty, comforting gray. The sun beat down, a dull, unwavering pressure. But I no longer felt its heat. The gray had begun to seep into my senses, a comforting numbness that spread from the inside out. I took the small bottle of bleach from my pocket. It was plain, unlabeled, the liquid inside a milky white. Grandma's secret. The whispered escape. Uncorking it released a faint, chemical scent that stung my nostrils. It wasn't unpleasant, just sterile. Empty. Like the world. I sat down on the sun-baked asphalt of the roof, my legs dangling over the edge. The drop wasn't significant, but it was a final step away from the vertical world. The image of the man in the cave flickered in my mind. His peaceful stillness. Jeffrey's imagined face. The pull was gentle now, a soft invitation. I tilted the bottle to my lips. The liquid was thick, viscous. It tasted faintly sweet, then a sharp, burning sensation bloomed on my tongue, spreading quickly down my throat. It wasn't agonizing, more like a sudden, intense warmth. My vision began to blur at the edges. The gray of the sky seemed to deepen, to swirl. The distant horizon softened, losing its harsh definition. The burning in my throat subsided, replaced by a growing lethargy. My limbs felt heavy, anchored to the rooftop. The silence around me seemed to amplify, the vast emptiness pressing in, no longer threatening, but embracing. I closed my eyes. The gray expanded, consuming the last vestiges of the bleached yellow and the faded black of the highway. There were no more memories, no more pain. Just the all-encompassing gray. Then, a sensation. A coolness on my face, like the imagined rain. It was gentle, soothing. And a voice. Distant, fading, but undeniably there. This fucking nightmare. It echoed in the gray, a final, mournful cry. My grip on the empty bottle loosened. It fell onto the asphalt with a soft clink, the sound swallowed by the vast silence. My body began to feel lighter, as if it were dissolving into the gray. The edges of my awareness softened, blurring into the infinite expanse. Just before the gray became absolute, a final image flickered behind my eyelids. The little dead girl. Sprawled on the highway. Her red, unblinking eyes staring up. This time, there was no shock, no revulsion. Only a quiet understanding. We were both finally at peace. A smile touched my lips. A small, private smile for her, and for the endless gray that now claimed me entirely. The rain continued to fall, silent and unseen, on the rooftop of the abandoned gas station. The last witness to a story that had ended in the vast, empty silence of a dying world.